Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Sri Banerjee, epidemiologist, biostatistician, faculty member, and in this segment I wanted to go over a recent paper that I was first author in and had multiple collaborators, students, alumni, and also other professors. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's take a look at first of all, let's take a look at the title, Mortality Risk Among Adult Americans Living with Cancer and Elevated C-reactive Protein. So it is known, just to give you a synopsis, it is known that cancer leads to overall mortality, right? However, what is not known is how C-reactive protein modifies that effect between cancer and mortality. So in other words, can we use C-reactive protein as a prognostic indicator for those cancers, those people with a history of cancer to experience mortality? So let's take a look at the highlights here, and I want to make this brief. I don't want to have a long lecture here. The highlights are the role of C-reactive protein in predicting mortality among cancer patients is not well explored. Cancer or elevated C-reactive protein alone increase the risk of mortality by at least 20%. Mortality risk more than doubled in individuals with both cancer and elevated C-reactive protein. And then elevated C-reactive protein is a potential predictor of mortality among cancer patients, and its role should be explored further. And that's where we were talking about C-reactive protein being a prognostic biomarker for those with a history of cancer. So here are some articles that I reviewed. Previously, there was some studies on the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. There were multiple studies that found that. And this is the abstract, actually. So this is our study, a brief synopsis of our study. So this is not high sensitivity C-reactive protein. This is C-reactive protein, and the cutoff there was greater than or equal to 2. So the cutoff point was right at 2. And as you can see, individuals that had only elevated C-reactive protein but no cancer was not as high as when you have both cancer and CRP elevated. Then the hazard ratio increases to 2.1. So, I mean, let's compare. This is pretty much evident from what is written here. So the hazard ratio for C-reactive protein alone is 1.67. However, when you have both cancer and elevated C-reactive protein, the hazard ratio goes up to 2.1. So the background is where, and the other purpose of my talk here is to try to describe how the research paper process works. So we start off by saying that cancer is a leading cause of mortality, and usually when you're structuring a paper, you want to make statements that have multiple statements within, so that you can condense what you're saying into less sentences. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to have too many people going through an article that is huge. They're probably going to want a brief understanding of what is going on and quickly look through your article to glean the most pertinent and relevant findings. So this is where the methods is where you start to kind of articulate what your variables were within the study, what were the cutoff points, and then what variables such as chronic kidney disease, Cockcroft-Gault equation. If you've seen any of my other research, then you'll know that this is the equation I use, even though there's additional ways to calculate chronic kidney disease. So we included body mass index and categorized that into various various categories, added some smoking. And so one thing to also remember is that, and this is one of the basic tenets in whether it's doctoral research or conducting peer-reviewed research, is that you want to control for confounding variables. What are confounding variables? These are variables that might have an impact on the relationship between, for instance, between for C-reactive protein and overall mortality, or even cancer and overall mortality. You might make the argument that sex or marital status or education are the reason you have an effect between cancer and overall mortality. So once you control for them, you know that sex, race, or education are not the reason that there is increased mortality. So then you want to describe your data analysis. And so this is actually going into, right here I want to show you here the models. This is where it is. The models were adjusted for socioeconomic status and health-related variables to produce adjusted hazard ratio. And again, what type of statistical test was used? Well, as it says here, Cox regression. So here are the results, and the results indicate that, first of all, Table 1 is looking at bivariate analysis. So is there an impact between cancer and age? Is there an impact, or is there an association between cancer and citizenship? Is there a relationship between cancer and gender? So typically, sometimes, in the social sciences, you're not really concerned with trying to only use the variables that are statistically significant in the bivariate analysis. There's some discrepancies between what social sciences use and a pure statistician uses. So in the social sciences, even if there's not a significant in bivariate analysis, you want to take these variables into your models, your regression models. Some people say loosen the p-value, don't make it 0.05, something higher. Sometimes the threshold is changed for acceptable p-value. So there's multiple ways to approach this. Most of the times what we do is enter the variables that have been already studied in the bivariate analysis, and you can take a quick look with the asterisk, and I can read these out that were statistically significant. So education level was not statistically significant. However, ethnicity, poverty income ratio, health insurance, chronic kidney disease, smoking, elevated C-reactive protein, and cardiovascular disease all are associated with cancer. And that's no surprise, really. But what is interesting is that the models, how these models operate. So there's the total population for Table 2, and then you have elevated C-reactive protein, no cancer history, and then normal C-reactive protein and cancer history. So these are kind of the comparator groups. The actual group that we're interested in is elevated CRP and cancer history. And previously I'd already kind of elaborated on this, that when you have both elevated C-reactive protein and cancer history, that really increases the mortality. So taking a look at when one is negative or the other, then the hazard ratio is quite low compared to the hazard ratio for both elevated and cancer history. And so we go through and provide the hazard ratio for some of the other variables that are in here. And then you describe, basically you describe this in the results section, what you have found in the tables. And then finally, you get to the discussion, and there have been some investigations and causal pathways that have demonstrated that there's a significant association between elevated C-reactive protein as a potentially process of aging, even atherosclerosis and other comorbidities. So that basically concludes it. Again, this was used in the 1999 to 2010 National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. I hope this has made some sense. Thank you for listening.